This is a review of 1969 Omega Seamaster. It's absolutely amazing. Christian is back. Thank you for joining us again.
I am wearing the Seamaster 300 from 1969, reference 165024. When this came out, it was pretty large. This measures about like 41, 42 with a 48 lug to lug, and on paper, I thought like, oh my god, that's like really large for my wrist. But surprisingly, it actually like really fits really well. It's a bit over the edge. It has a very flat profile. And it's cool. Like if there was gonna be like a James Bond watch, I think this should be it. And I think I'm not alone with that kind of opinion. I think there are people from other publications who kind of alluded to this watch.
This is so much cooler than any of the real James Bond Omegas.
Yeah, I have to say, and it has definitely ties to the British military.
So speaking of British military, so your watch is very, very similar to the one that was actually issued by British Royal Navy.
Well, the first obvious thing is the dial layout. The one that was issued to the military had what they call the big triangle, which is this large pizza-sized triangle on the 12 o'clock. It's great. It's lovely, and it has a stamp. Some dials have like a T,
but not all of them. Some of them actually look like yours. So yeah,
and then you know, of course, like in the back there's like, you know, the issue number and the arrow, the arrow symbol. But if I have to pick at face value, like aesthetically, I think this one is much more pleasing with the 12, 3, 6, and 9 emeralds.
And that one does not have fixed bars, right? So you can actually remove the
I can actually remove it. This has been sort of like one of my grails. And to me, a grail is something that you could really never have, because it's either too expensive, which is in most cases, or it's like really so rare that, you know, you don't find them floating around. And once again, it's going to cost you a lot of money if it ever shows up.
This one's kind of both.
This was kind of both. And then last year, a friend of mine, who I haven't been in contact with for so long, hey, I didn't know you're into watches. So apparently he probably caught wind that I was into watches, and he told me that there is a watch that my dad used to wear.
Ooh.
And I'm like, oh, nice, cool. It's like, what kind of watch is it? It's like, it's an Omega. And then he sent me a photo, and I'm like, whoa. I'm like, dude, do you know what you have right now? And he was like, yeah, I read some things about it, and you know, there are some people who are like, you know, a local AD Omega talked to him about it and stuff like that. And I said, oh, that's a really nice thing, you know, like your dad had it. And well, his dad was a serviceman here in the US, and so I don't know how it was acquired. It's definitely not an issued watch. It's definitely a civilian distributed watch. My version, normally this would come with a 552 movement. Mine has a 552 movement, but instead of a 24 jewel count, it's only 17.
Oh yeah, because the tariff was per jewel.
So that's the only way that they could actually do it. I did my research, and according to the person that I talked to, he's the author of Seamaster300.com. It's a very valuable source. I think anyone who actually publishes about reference points somewhere should have looked at that website first.
We should talk about reference points too.
Well, I got a US import version of it. There are two variations of that. One would have been like they've already assembled the 24 jewels, and because they were already made, they had to take the jewels out and replace it with metal bearings. And luckily, I did not get that kind of movement where they had to like
had to remove,
pull it out.
uh-huh.
I got the 550 movement, which is basically the 552, which is a 17 jewel version of it.
Nice.
And I did also due diligence, so the reference or the number, the movement number also lines up with the year that this came out.
Very nice.
So it was around 1969.
Uh-huh.
Later,
This one's screwed down?
this is the screw down version.
Whoa.
So later on, between 67
Love
and
it.
69, Omega
Love it.
decided, because they were hoping that, you know, this could be used for more deeper diving situations, that they found out that it's much better to have a screw down crown. So they've developed it. Between 67 and 69, things started to get ushered in. And that's what I'm trying to say. They never really had to say like, okay, this production for the Nikon stops right now. It's just like the same watch, and they just slowly. And according to all the sources that I've looked into, like these things have different variations. Like sometimes, like like for example, the 10. You know, this one has a serif, but they have 3 different types of ones that has a serif with different thickness, different way of how the serif goes, and you just have to, you know, like compare and contrast what came out at that time. So these things just get really like.
But basically, there is a website. There is a guy who knows these Seamasters very well, and he documented.
And I would
like
recommend
what's correct, what's not correct. Guys, fakes are everywhere. Like these watches are expensive, so now you know what to do, how to verify that the watch is actually correct. Like one thing that I absolutely love about your watch is this like bakelite bezel, and for some reason brands stopped doing that. They are so cool, man.
Right. Well, you know, we all know that in the end that bakelite bezel is actually not good for you once you start inhaling like small fragments of it. I mean, also, well, bakelite is not as hardy material as ever, especially when it's vintage, and I'm lucky enough to have something that's much more intact. And what happens is it's either it cracks because it was thrown into an ultrasonic cleaner like everything else, like they do.
Starts vibrating,
or let alone that water would come in. And I think it's a reaction of a tritium. Tritium tends to expand once water touches it somehow, and so when it expands, it causes more pressure. It cracks out of the bezel. But these watches came with 2 different cases. One is the CB case, and then one is the HF, the Hugen case. And this one is a CB case version, which I have no preference at all.
But
like,
both are correct for the reference.
Both are correct for the reference and for the time that it was made, because they actually had to have, you know, to transfer making cases to CB afterwards. And who knows, you know, like it's back in the day, they always outsourced these things, including the hands, which is why most dials are, you know, have a different state than the hands look.
So this is very typical for vintage watches. A lot of vintage watches, if they were never touched, the lume on hands will be different than lume on the rest of the dial, and that's okay. So in my case, actually with expensive watches, I would be more worried if the lume on hands would perfectly match the lume on dial, because somebody probably did some work on that to match them. If they don't match, it means that nobody did anything, and that's actually a good thing for me. That more shows that the watch is actually correct.
It's original bracelet, based on the website again, Seamaster300.com. It has a period correct serial for the end links. So on the website too, it'll tell you it's like a 1039, and then there is a number here that says like 1969 right there. It's a nice bracelet, you know.
I love these vintage bracelets. They're so like almost like silky. I can imagine that it fits very well.
I have sort of what I say, like my go-to place, Swiss Precision watchmaking in the financial district. you know, I brought some watches there before, and he is an Omega certified service
Very nice.
center. So
And he can get parts.
he could get parts.
Nice.
So that's the thing. Well, the first thing that he noticed was that, like, you know, this probably would require new gaskets and cores, new tubes, and surprisingly, the movement did not require a lot of like replacement, except for the
Nice.
mainspring, of course.
I mean, that's
Maybe a couple of screws here and there that you know have like some tarnishing. Surprisingly, it didn't cost a lot. I mean, it is a very standard service, like 700-800. It did take a while.
whatever you needed was available. Even Omega Crystal wasn't available, which I'm super surprised. This is amazing. So Christian, thank you so much. Amazing watch. Thank you for sharing it with us. And guys, if you like Christian and you want to see more of him, see our discussion with Christian about how Archie Luxury got robbed. That's fascinating. Very, very sad story right over here, but fascinating story.